Hello and welcome to the second Practice Excellence marketing session, how to get the right kind of clients. Thank you to our sponsors at Receipt Bank. I'm Alex Tucker, Head of Marketing at PracticeWEB, and I'm joined by Siobhan Dolan, who's the Marketing Manager at Dunkleys, and Jon Baker, Author and Business Coach.
Hi Alex.
Our agenda for today, we'll be talking about how to define the right type of clients for your firm. We'll be talking about how you craft a message, about obviously marketing activity, and we're going to talk about some more complex ideas around what we call the consideration cycle. Just some quick housekeeping. Don't worry about any technical issues today, any problems with audio, anything like that. You will receive a recording and a write-up of the session at the after we're finished. We don't have any polls today, but if you do have any questions, we'll be keeping an eye on the iPad, so do ask away. And there are some supporting documents, so do have a look. There's one called Practice Excellence Session Exercises, so download that after the session. There's some exercises in there that you can run through that will help you to take some action based on the ideas we'll talk about today. So the first thing we want to cover off is how you define the right type of clients. And of course, understanding who you want as clients and how you're going to attract them is one of the central ideas of marketing, but it's not always that simple for firms. So we often ask people, what's your biggest marketing challenge? And the most common answer, once you get past things like budget and time, is finding the right type of client. But Jon, we recently ran a webinar and asked people what's important when you look at new clients, and what was the answer?
I thought it was amazing. It was, we want to work with people that we like to work with.
But as a marketeer, Siobhan's going to tell you, how do you find the email addresses for those people?
Aren't they on LinkedIn?
It's impossible to scale that through marketing, isn't it? So, Siobhan, Dunkleys is a firm that obviously has a very clear definition of who it wants as clients, and has several very specific specialist sectors that you operate in. How do you go about choosing and developing those sectors to start with?
Well, I think the best place to start is identifying the clients that you already work with and figuring out if you've already got a specialist sector without perhaps even realising it. So when I joined Dunkleys, I was able to sit down with the partners and sort of look through our client base and figure out any sectors that we already sort of specialised in. And the thing that we've found is that working in specialist sectors has helped us raise our brand, helped us increase sales, and really just raise our profile. So for Dunkleys, it's been really beneficial.
Okay, and how does it differ working with, is there a big difference between working with, say, a care home and an academy school? Yeah,
massively. Like, with any type of business, each different business faces its own challenges. So, the problems that a care home would face would be different to, say, for an academy school. So it's really important when you're trying to market to different businesses that you identify the needs that they have and the requirements that they have, and then tailor your marketing message to meet that need.
Okay, and what are the sort of key benefits to Dunkleys of that focused approach?
Well, it helps us increase credibility. Once you get your name into a particular sector, clients become sort of advocates of your firm, and your name kind of gets out there, which in turn helps sales. So yeah, it's helped us raise our profile, increase sales.
Quicker conversion, and people recognise you.
Yeah.
Jon, in your books and the work you do with your clients, you're an evangelist for having a niche, as you would put it. But a lot of the people on the call today might be more generalist. Where do you recommend firms start?
I mean, I'll just back into what Siobhan was saying before we did that, which is why doing it. As you said, you found you get more clients. You get known as an expert more because you're working in a narrower field, which is what the book was all about. But I think the other thing that many of my clients say is that it's this conversion time, which we touched on very, very briefly. When people come to you and your partners, Siobhan, I bet that they are coming to you almost pre-sold.
Yeah.
And that's you don't need to sell to them. They're coming up to you and saying, please, will you let us sign up, please? Which is a very, very different proposition. So I think one of the other big benefits of being an expert in a narrower niche is people really want to work with you. And of course, then finally, quite often, if you are an expert in a smaller niche, your fees can be slightly higher than some of the others, and they should reflect that. So whole range of benefits. But for a small firm, can a smaller firm work in a niche? And the answer is yes. And then kind of where would they start? And I think credibility, because you touched on credibility first. If you were thinking of going, or should I be in this niche or this or this, the first thing I'd go is, where are you credible? One client of mine was talking about wanting to develop a niche because of all the reasons we've said. And we talked about his past, because he was running a generalist firm. But in digging a bit deeper, he used to be an FD in a construction firm. And so literally, he had a construction industry background. And after he came out of that, he ran a small construction business of his own. So it will come as no surprise, really, when we go, where did he have credibility? Where did people go, you know what you're talking about? And it was construction. So the first obvious one is, are you credible in the sector you're talking about? I think the second one is a word that I hate, because marketers use it far too much nowadays, but I'm going to use it anyway, and that's passion. Do you have a passion for the sector you're talking about? So we were joking earlier, and we were saying about the nursery sector. You might have all the credibility and expertise in the world, but if you really don't like working in that area, it's not worth trying, because you will get found out. You'll start playing to perhaps some of the typical accountant stereotypes. I'll stop there before I'm rude, shall I? So, are you passionate about the sector you're talking about? So, an IT firm that I know specialises in working with IT companies, and they get really excited about new apps, new websites, new technologies, way more than I do. And I thought I was excited about passionate about IT, but they get really excited. So it's a good match for them. The next one I think is expertise, which is different to credibility. So credibility is where you can, you look good from the outside, but expertise is, do you really know the stuff? You can work on it, and we're going to touch on content interviews, I think, later on, Alex, when we start going, where do we get this content marketing from? But where are you expert in? That's the next test I would apply. I think there's one about profit, which is a fairly obvious one, which is to say, are there enough companies that make enough money to pay the fees that you want in the sector you're looking at? Because if there's not, it's not worth talking about. But the final one, of course, is my favourite of all time. When I hear people say, I specialise in working with SME businesses or owner-managed businesses, I specialise in working with 95% of the UK. That's not really a specialism. So my fifth test is about coherence. Can you put a coherent message into that sector which people in that sector will really engage with? So I think it's fair to say that anybody running a business, if you said, would you like to make more profit, they'll say yes. Mm-hmm. But in your experience, Siobhan, if you went out and used, would you like to make more profit as a marketing message?
It's too vague, isn't it?
It's far too vague. Yeah. It's not even going to excite people.
Not even a credible message, is it?
It's not credible either. But if you can narrow that niche down and you can start to talk about something absolutely important to people in that particular sector, it's very relevant, and it's coherent to all the people in your sector. So you might go, I'm going to jam together carpet manufacturers and rug manufacturers, but they've probably got the same problems.
And that idea of relevance actually probably does bring us really nicely to our next point, which is to get to know the individuals, the decision makers within that sector once you've chosen it, because companies don't search Google and firms don't pick up the phone and ring Dunkleys. It's people that do. So once you've chosen your niche, or if you're a larger firm, some specialist sectors, then it's really important to have a clear idea of who it is you're communicating with and what's the message. So we talk about buyer personas, and this is just a framework that we use. So there's a blank one that you can fill in the supporting document, but really you need to understand the background of the person, the typical person that you're going to be engaging with. What are the demographics? Importantly, what are their goals and what are their challenges? What's stopping them from achieving what they need to? And then where do you fit within that? How do you solve their problems? So that you can craft a really compelling message to identify with those firms. So, you know, that's something that we would highly recommend.
I find it really useful. I often try to think of the person sort of like, you know, the wider background, you know, what are their hobbies,
Yeah.
what kind of places do they go to, and try to get a real general understanding of the, as you said, the individuals that run these
Yeah.
businesses. You know, I find that really useful.
And I think the
Communication
point,
preferences as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
the point comes back to exactly your thing, Alex, which is a company does not go onto Google and search for something, a
No.
person does. A company does not turn up and say, I want to sign up, a person does. So it's about understanding the typical person in that sector.
Yeah.
But then understanding that you're doing it for a marketing reason, so it's the typical person, but as you get further down the consideration cycle,
It's more bespoke,
it's
isn't
going to
it?
become much, much more personalised.
Yeah.
Get into that in a lot more detail quite soon. So we've decided, we've decided on our niche. We've done some research. We've got our sectors there. We understand the people. We need to develop a set of messages that appeal to those people directly. And Siobhan, I guess you must have quite different sets of messages and tactics for the different sectors. How might that vary from one to
Yeah,
another?
sure. So say, for example, we work with a number of sectors within the healthcare industry. And, you know, as most people are aware, there's legislation, you know, and changes in funding. Everything is continually changing. So it's really important that we as a business keep on top of all of the news and developments within each sector. So it really is a full-time job, keeping up to date with the news, because we need to understand, going back to the persona thing, we need to understand the situation that these prospective clients are in to help them solve their problems.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that we have different marketing messages for different sectors, and that we have sort of a wealth of literature and information targeted to each sector.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, as Jon was saying, you can't just, you know, put a vague message out there and accept for people to respond.
Yeah, okay. So obviously we've sort of established that most firms can focus on one niche. Smaller firms might just be too much to take on.
I mean, I think somebody like Dunkleys, as you said, you've got a number of areas. If I was running a small firm, perhaps there's just one or two of me. That'd be scary, wouldn't it? It's about a sector.
So one of the ideas that that's going to help smaller firms develop a more overarching message or value statement for their firm will be something called the Golden Circle. And if you're interested in reading more, finding out more about this, I'd highly recommend reading a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. But his assertion is that everyone in the world, everyone can describe what it is they do, and for most of us, it's not all that exciting, really. A lot of people can describe how they do it. So there might be some secret sauce. You've got your special process, your way of doing things, the thing that makes you special, and many people can describe that, but not everyone. His assertion is that really special firms and organisations can describe why they do it. The people who buy into those firms do so. They buy into it and become loyal because of that feeling of shared purpose. Now he's developed this idea from studying, you know, the world's leading brands, the Apples, the Googles of the world. But Jon, how could a small one partner, two partner accountancy firm, how could they apply that kind of thinking to their?
I think
brand?
Again it comes back to the reason. This really overused word again, but what are the passions? What is it that really gets you excited, that also gets your clients? It's about identifying with clients. If clients can see what motivates you, and this is I think the point that Simon Sinek's getting at, why you are motivated, why you're excited by and what you're excited by, then they are more likely to identify with you, or not. Remember, sometimes I think the purpose of marketing is to attract the right people,
Filter out the
and get rid of the rest. Yeah, but so why do you want to work with? Let's use the construction one again as a quick example. You know, with all the years he had in the construction industry, he was incredibly passionate about getting construction right, not just from an accounting perspective, and that's what his clients and his potential clients could be attracted by. They could identify with it. So I think yes, it is feasible, but you've got to really get at what it is that makes you excited. And because I like saving you tax is not generally the thing.
No, so there's a real cause there that particular client, they're not just using it as a marketing message, they're really living that day.
They're believing it.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah,
comes
you've got
across.
to.
I think
Yeah.
people can see that.
Yeah.
But you know, when you're honest and that is your real passion, I think it comes through a lot easier.
I think I've seen through, I've spotted some of the corporate social responsibility work that Dunkleys did around a dental charity actually that really brought that home for me, that Dunkleys wasn't just kind of paying lip service to, we can help this set of people with this set of business problems.
We go one step further. Yeah.
There was actually a belief there that that could make a difference in the world.
And again, it goes back to having a wider understanding of that sector and the wider sort of the news and the information that helps you understand that area better.
Yeah.
And again, many small firms resist the idea of niching, as we were saying, and they say, I work very closely in the local area, and that's their niche. A niche doesn't have to be a sector. I think it can be a very geographical one. But if you're going to do something geographical, a bit like your dental equivalent, what are you really, really, really doing locally? So that you're identified not with accounting and business in the local area, but
community.
But you're showing that you are linked to that community, because that's the why coming back in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's still that cause, which is, it has to be genuine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of firms I know that are always in the news, which of course doesn't hurt them, for doing stuff with charities in the very local area.
Okay, so we've selected our sectors, decided on our niche, done some research, identified the people, crafted our message. How do we get the message out there? How does Dunkleys find and convert care homes, academy schools, dentists? Where do you go to find them, and what's the journey that you take them on from there to becoming a client?
So my approach has always been integration with marketing. So I think it's really important to focus your activities across a range of channels. So for example, that could be offline things such as, going to trade shows, going to maybe specific networking groups, or getting in touch with local hospitals or local schools, or finding different ways to meet your prospective audience. We combine that with a range of sort of online marketing techniques such as email marketing, social media, maybe the odd bit of telemarketing as well to sort of reinforce that. So it's all about touching base several times with the prospective client, and then making sure you either maybe drip feed them relevant information. So it could be sort of like, how-to guides, maybe emailing them a case study video, or just trying to reinforce your message with other pieces of marketing. And then it's about nurturing that lead to then ideally convert it.
So I'm getting a sense there that it's really important to kind of join up the dots between your offline activity and your online activity.
Massively, yeah.
There must be some measurement in there that shows you where your leads are coming from.
Yeah, so going back to the integration, it's really important to sort of to compile all of your leads and make sure that you can trace back and look at different forms of marketing and figure out which is the most effective. And then you can go back and say, right, okay, well, say for example, trade shows are really productive for us. Let's focus and do more of them. Or maybe telemarketing isn't working so well, so let's maybe pull some resource away from that.
And do you have, again, the idea of sort of joining up that consistent experience between what you're doing online and offline, once that lead becomes kind of ready to have a real conversation with a real person and you're into kind of sales and service, are there dedicated people within Dunkleys that just take care of that sector? Yeah,
I think it's really, really important to actually have a specialist in-house, because going back to what Jon was saying, it's all about the person, and once we attract a specialist client, it's all well and good that we've put all the right procedures in place to get them to the inquiry point. But then if they come in and say, well, where is your specialist? And this, we don't have one, then the whole journey is pointless.
There's that credibility.
So so we've got several partners that specialise in a few key areas, and they're the ones having one point of contact for one specialist sector means that person can focus their research and their time on making sure that they fully understand that area. So when the prospective client does come in, they're speaking to someone that can talk the same language as them.
That sounds like a lot of work. So, Jon, a lot of the firms that you work with, they're not lucky enough to have someone like Siobhan looking after marketing and business development. Is there a danger that we're encouraging people to bite off more than they can chew by?
I think there's a great danger, and that's why a couple of things. First of all, why did we talk about going with a sector, not several? The second thing is about doing a lot of the research earlier on, so that you really know what you're talking to and who you're talking to. But I suppose for me the question is, where does all this content come from? Because Siobhan touched on what I call recycling.
Yeah.
If I produced it in one format, it's on a
Definitely.
video, it's on a webinar, I want to make use of it in the other formats that I can.
Mm-hmm.
Get it typed up, get it out on Twitter, get whatever channels I'm using, get the same kind of messages out by recycling. But where is this content coming from, I think, is the real question. So I've narrowed it down to a niche in a small practice, but now I've got to say, well, where do I get it? And I think I start with research, and that's about speaking to clients, and that's about speaking to potential clients. Because every time, for example, I've got a couple of clients of mine that do complimentary sessions before they sign them up, and that's great, and they sit there and say it's great because it converts people. But what the accountant gets from it is they sit there and chat to them, and they're capturing the questions they get asked.
Mm-hmm.
So the potential client's asking some questions in a particular language, the language of the sector, and so they're making sure they capture those and their answers to them. Because if one or two people in your client bank or prospect bank are asking that question, guess what? In Google land, lots more are asking the same thing. So listen to what people are saying to you, ask them questions and dig into that. And accountants are asking these kind of questions all the time.
One of the key things I'm picking up on there is you mentioned the language, and if you're expecting for that to translate into search engine success, then you better learn to speak Builder, haven't you?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
that is the whole thing. So speak Builder if you want to speak to builders, because builders describe the same tax problem in that nurseries or academy schools face, but they describe it totally. I mean, from your own experience, you've mentioned 3 or 4 sectors. Each of them fundamentally have the same problems, but they don't describe them.
Yeah, and I think going back to the relevant communications, using the right lingo in your marketing is key. Because again, if you can show you understand the area and the sector that they're working in, and by using the right terminology, just reinforces that.
Yeah, absolutely. So people don't understand it, they're not going to convert, are they?
Yeah.
So the content's going to come from what questions clients ask you. Another good one for getting some of this content is the owners of small firms often are part of networking groups or go and do presentations to chambers of commerce and things like this. Well, if you've got the notes that you last used in a presentation, I bet you bottom dollar that those same notes could be recycled into some other fantastic content.
Yeah.
Or if you were doing a 10-minute presentation in a networking group, could it be videoed?
Yeah.
Could that video alone become content? And if you weren't keen on your face being on camera because, like me, you've got a face for radio, just take the notes and get those typed up.
I've seen the camera, Jon.
Yeah, I'm scared. It's broken, it is.
So yeah, we've seen clients produce fantastic kind of ebooks from those 10-minute presentations. It's just the ones that are really well received. So you get a little round of applause for your presentation. You know you need to go and do something else with it. And once you've got that guide, that could be a whole load of blog posts that you just break it into smaller components. Really.
And even if you don't want to call it blog posts because you don't like having a website, I believe there's a few that don't like. The same stuff on leaflets. When you're handing stuff out at trade show because you're tackling the problems of the people at that show. So it's
But
the
do
same.
get a website.
I do have a website, absolutely. But it is all I'm getting at is the content can be the same, but it's about putting in the different media.
Yeah.
There's a point there though, Siobhan. I guess you're at these kind of trade shows or industry events, you must have something printed that you hand out. So you're sending people from that, I guess, to some sort of specific landing page so that you know where they're coming from. Maybe there's you have dedicated phone numbers and things like that in there to track where people are coming from?
We don't go as far to have dedicated phone numbers. We have industry-specific literature that, to be fair, normally does just direct them to our generic homepage. But on our website, we've got a sectors tab, and then it drops down, and then we've got specific literature, specific content for each sector.
So from that offline meeting, you're very specific about where you want people to go. So there's a link to a specific page for that industry, and then are you using, once you've captured those details, you're using sort of segmented lists in your email system and Twitter and things like that?
So I've got several different sort of segmented databases on our email marketing software. So I can, at a click, say, right, I want to send a targeted campaign to all of our dental clients. And again, it goes back to sending the right message to the right group of people, because the message you send to a dentist would be different to the message you send to a construction company.
And I was talking to somebody yesterday who runs their own small practice, and they've been using one of the big email marketing systems that we won't of course advertise, but they had in the last 6 months their open rate had nearly doubled, and their click-through rate had doubled, in fact just over doubled. And I said, wow, what have you done? I knew the answer because I told her to do it 6 months before. but all she had done is broken it down into, and she put 4 or 5 questions into her database so that she had 3 or 4 segments, and then slightly different versions of the same email went out. Bang.
The statistics are very impressive when you segment.
I mean, we work with accountants, tens of thousands of accountancy firms in the UK. We need to segment more deeply than that. So if you're working in a large niche, the needs of a big firm within that niche might be quite different to those of a smaller firm, and the messaging might need to vary.
I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now, but even if you have got a really generic, even if maybe you don't think you've got any specialist sectors, even by breaking up your database into, right, these are clients that have been on board for a year, these are clients that we've had for 5 years, you're still going to need to send different messages to different current clients.
The funniest one I've seen is from somebody who was sending email system newsletter out. It's nearly saying the name, and but they were sending it out to all the prospects and all the clients.
The same message. And so a client I actually know, because they rang me up because I knew them, and they said, why am I getting something from this person asking me to sign up when I'm already a client? So if you're going to have an email system, at the very least, have client and non-client. Basic,
but there are people that get that wrong. So we were talking about giving some basic tips away, Alex, and I don't think it comes any more basic than that.
So there we've got not only capturing contact details, but getting your brand out there at these events. You've got these kind of, we call them ebooks, some people call them white papers, and I know that you talk to your clients about using those. I think the phrase you use is a lead magnet, so that people will fill in a form in order to gain access to something like that. And I'm sure Dunkleys has similar activities there. I think that the next step is to actually start to look at how do we we've got all these leads, how do we convert them into sales? So we were talking earlier about hypothetical industry event where Siobhan had collected, let's say, 1,000 email addresses.
Bonus time.
Clearly time to speak to the boss about salaries, but want to talk about the consideration cycle. So any one of those 1,000 people, indeed anyone out there in the market, will be in one of 3 stages of what we call the consideration cycle. Some people call it the buyer journey, and those are these. At stage 1, they may have unidentified needs. So they have they may have come across your brand, but they have no idea that they need your service. And this could apply to existing clients who need additional services.
So this might be a company that has been trading for a while that would benefit from moving to Dunkleys, for example, but don't know why they'd benefit, so they're not even looking. Is that
they're not aware.
Exactly, no awareness. And then the second stage is that they've identified an issue of some sort. but they're not qualified, and they either don't have the budget, the authority. They may not have. It may not be that urgent for them. They may just not have the information they need to make a decision, but they're not. They're unhappy about something.
So they might be. I might be an academy school that's not one of your clients, but I feel that I could get better service if my accountant understood me better. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might think you're paying too much tax. Your payroll might be a headache. It could be any number of things. But you're just not at the point of doing something about it yet. And then the third and most attractive stage of the buying cycle is they're actively seeking a solution. These are the people who are searching Google. They're looking for answers to the problem, and they've probably got a budget. They're looking to compare prices. They're looking to compare services. They're shopping.
So a number of years ago, I hasten to add, Alex, I might have been doing research into how to stop myself from losing so much hair. That would put me at the first stage, I presume.
Yeah. So we talked about the male pattern baldness analogy earlier, didn't we? So if you were searching for what to do if you're losing your hair, you'd probably you're somewhere between 1 and 2, I would guess. You might not even be searching at stage 1.
But if I started looking for how efficient hair restorer liquids were, I'm at stage 2, I guess.
Yeah.
And then if I looked for XYZ component, it's probably I really, really want to buy, or I'm very interested in it, I'm definitely at stage 3.
There you have it. So if you're a manufacturer of hair restorer out there...
I've given up, by the way.
Okay, we won't give you Jon's details. But the type of content that you need to engage people at the different stages of this cycle are quite different. So at that first stage where they have an unidentified need, but they've found their way onto our Twitter list or our email database, the best thing we can do to keep those people engaged is just give them helpful, useful, informative content, stuff that helps them, it makes their life easier or helps them to do their job better. So those are the things that we were talking about as lead magnets, I suppose.
We find sort of the right kind of literature for that kind of stage is sort of like, really generic documents, sort of generic but useful. So like, like how-to guides and top tips. You're not giving away too much information, but you're proving that you can help people. Yeah,
exactly. And it's genuinely helpful. So it's something they can do.
Mm-hmm. And that's where lots of blogs would come into it, I presume, Alex? Okay.
Yeah. And then in the middle, so where you've identified that you've got an issue, but there's not too much you're going to do about it right now. This is all about social proof. Talk about how other people have benefited. So here we're talking testimonials, case studies, but also reviews, which I think are underused by professional services generally. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail shortly. And then at stage 3, where people are actively seeking a solution, the kind of content that we need to provide to draw people even closer to us and hopefully make them become clients is content that proves value. So that's about why should they choose you? Why should they choose Dunkleys? Why should they work with Jon?
So that's about saying at the first stage, the one that's furthest away from buying, I'm likely to be looking for... As a content producer, as the accountant, I'm looking to write content which is just answering general questions that people will have. At the second stage, so they've now they've wandered onto your mailing list, they know something about you, they've seen some of your articles. At that point, you want to be telling them what other people have said about you.
Yeah, we're big advocates of social proof. So on our website, we've got a whole page that's just testimonials. And again, we pick sort of key people from our specialist sectors. Actually, going back to our specialist sectors pages, we use relevant testimonials on those pages to have social proof.
Yeah.
So, on our dentist page, we have a testimonial from one of our biggest dental clients, reinforcing the fact that we've supported them throughout their growth.
Another great example of joining up the dots there from Dunkleys, I think.
And one of the things that I think is really, really good is using Google reviews. It's a really good quick fix. We've done a lot of work recently where we've been contacting our clients and getting them to leave us Google reviews, because things like case studies are great, but it's quite time consuming. You've got to get the client to approve, you've got to get them, you've got to meet up with them, spend a couple of hours, interviewing them, then do the write up. So
people have to be on your website in the first place to see them as well, don't they?
Exactly, yeah. Whereas the Google ones I found are really, really useful.
And Google likes them, and Google's more likely to send them to your website if you've got some.
Yeah.
So.
I think we'll get to on and off-site reviews in a little bit more detail very soon as well. But the final piece, stage 3, where people are actively seeking a solution, is far more personal content about why I, as an individual, should choose. So this
is the first time when I'd actually be selling, in inverted commas.
I may have made an inquiry at this stage.
Yeah, so that's the first time I'm going to talk about me. Up until now, I've been talking about you and your problems. I've been talking about what other people have said about me.
Yeah.
But I've not been talking about me.
Yeah, now's the time to promote your services. Yeah.
So this might be, a lot of firms out there offer a free consultation. The experience you have at that stage, or the presentation that you deliver in a sales meeting, or the proposal document that you send, these all form part of your content at phase 3. So that's where you need to focus. So let's talk a little bit more detail about the first stage, the helpful content, white papers, ebooks, webinars, seminars, all those things that help make people's lives a little easier. This for me sometimes seems like the most daunting, time-consuming thing, and even I've worked in marketing for longer than I like to admit. Often find myself staring at a white paper as just that, a blank piece of paper, really difficult to get started. What would be your productivity hacks around?
Well, I think going back to what we were talking about at the start of this session was, about the persona.
Yeah.
And I think that leads in really nicely into the how-to guides and the top tips and tricks thing, because once you can identify with the individual that you're targeting and think about them as an individual, as a business owner, what are the problems that they are going to have to face?
Yeah.
And then you can use that information then to build this kind of content around that individual. Because I think without the persona, where do you start?
Yeah, really important. And I think, Jon, you said to me on a webinar not that long ago that you felt that if you've done this research, the content's almost...
If you've done the research, the content is much more in front of you. If you've done the research, you've thought about your ideal people, you've thought about the personas, it's kind of so much easier. But the other one is really, really simple. And most accountants are out there right now listening to this will have typical questions they get asked by clients, or typical questions they get asked at networking meetings. Oh, what would you do about this?
Yeah.
And most accountants could tell you the top 20 questions they get asked.
What can I claim on expenses?
That's your answer.
Yeah.
That's 20 articles, whatever you want to call them. Even if you don't want to call it a white paper, how about a Q&A? An FAQ to start with. You could always start with the top 20 questions.
Yeah.
Question, very short answer. Over the next few months, you could take that question number 1, build it into a long... Absolutely.
So reuse, repurpose, be careful about being overly repetitive about these things, but once you've written your 20 separate pieces around your FAQs, no reason you can't put those together to form a bigger, more high-value guide or presentation that somebody might fill in a form to download. So works both ways. You could scale up or scale down to get smaller, and that's going to it's going to help you with your social stuff as well. It gives you something to tweet about, post about, and so on. So,
and you can use it to help drive traffic to your site. If you put it as promote it through social media and put it as a link to your website, you're then going to drive more traffic to your site, and then hopefully get more inquiries.
And that's, you touched on lead magnet earlier, Alex, and that's where you've got this. So you've got this incredibly helpful book, let's say. When I say book, it might be only half a dozen pages, but it's really useful. You're advertising it on Twitter, people are landing on that page. But it's valuable enough that they're willing to give you their email address.
So this is all the stuff that the marketing people we call top of the funnel, isn't it? Really, and it's about getting people from being completely unaware to having interest, and then the rest of this cycle is about taking that interest, turning it into intent. So the next thing we mentioned was at the second stage, social proof is the really killer important piece of content or type of content, I should say, because there are lots of different ways of communicating this, that's going to help draw people that step closer to being a client. You mentioned testimonials are the big thing that Dunkleys does, and you have those on your site.
Definitely, and on the relevant pages.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that you can promote through social media, through email marketing. If you've got a segmented list of a specialist sector that you want to target, why not send them out, information about people that you've worked with, maybe anonymously, but it's, use it where you can. And as we go back to keep on saying about repurposing data and information.
Any tips for
the one I'd add that I've seen lots of people do really well from is what I call one client, 1 week.
Yeah.
And that is they speak to a client a week. That's really radical, this one. But I'm not talking when they send the bill. I'm not talking chasing them up for the tax information, because both of those are kind of stressful situations. I'm talking about almost out of the blue.
Yeah.
Ringing a client up and just grabbing a few minutes with them. And two things happen out of this conversation. The first thing is you're checking, is the service that they are getting from you good?
Yeah.
Because if the answer comes back in any way, anything other than no, it's fantastic, you've now got an early warning signal you can deal with.
Yeah.
So you could save yourself from losing a client next year or the year after. Now, assuming, of course, because everyone out there is going to be giving great client service, the next thing comes back is you start to ask them a couple of questions about the service that you give them, and what you're getting back is their words. It's called testimonials, but it's in their words. And then all you've got to do is ask them if you can use some of those words.
Yeah.
So you've given them a short 5-minute interview, out of which you've potentially saved yourself clients. And I've known a couple of people who have, quite literally, saved themselves some very good clients by doing this. And also, you've got great marketing material. And you're doing one a week. It's not...
also, in addition, off the back of that, once you start to compile all this feedback, you say, for example, you do the one a week for, 4 weeks, you will then build stats that say out of 100% of people surveyed, 90% say they'd recommend us to a friend.
Brilliant idea. I've not even thought of that one. Yeah.
There's,
so then you get statistics to reinforce, the message that you're saying. Yeah.
Again, that's true social proof, isn't it? To say the number of, that 8 out of 10 cats kind of statement. Something else that I've seen a couple of firms do really well is at the point of solving a problem or having had a really great catch up with a client, they just tweet them and say how nice it was to catch up, or it was really great to have this discussion about this subject with you today. And because at that stage they've caught their client at their happiest, almost always either gets a reply saying it was so great to see you or catch up with you, or a retweet. And again, it's not a full case study, it's not a testimonial, but there's a form of social proof. All of that firm's followers have then seen what a great accountant, what a great guy you are, how either just how nice you are to do business with, or even better, how well you've solved that problem. It's only an instant, but it's a really good form of social proof. Yeah. And then you mentioned, can you tell us a bit more about the Google reviews? You mentioned that a couple of times.
Yeah. So we, as I said, one of the things that we've noticed on our website is that we've added is we've got lots of testimonials. However, transferring that onto Google reviews has been a bit of an issue recently, because we've got these testimonials on paper, but Google reviews, we need an actual Google user to log on and do that. So we've been going through a bit of a manual process of contacting some of our clients to leave Google reviews. But again, for social proof and SEO sort of purposes, Google reviews have been really, really useful.
You see those, when you see in the search results, those 4.5 stars compared to someone with no reviews, where most people are going to click, don't you? So that's a really not a difficult way of actually really improving your results in search. And then related to search, something else that's worth doing, because Google's now showing results from other review sites in search engine results pages, and a lot of those reviews sites are going to have more clout when it comes to SEO than you do. It's just to Google reviews of accountants in your town. See which sites turn up really well. Yeah. Target those for reviews.
Actually sit there, Google.
Search for the words reviews of accountants in Bristol, or your town, obviously.
And
Try and
It's
see
not
it from
Bristol.
your prospective clients'
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, use the word reviews in your search and see which of those review sites performs the best.
And then get some
You
reviews
can do
on
the-
that site.
You can do the same for your niche, do the same for your niche
Yep.
and for your brand as well. So you can build up a reviews strategy there that's gonna help you to convert, help you to perform well in those search engines. And then the last thing here was about how we prove value. And from the work that although I've been a client-side marketer for a long time, so I've been involved in other industries, the work that I do with accountants, this is probably the area where I'm least involved. So I'm going to have to completely defer to your knowledge and experience here. But what are the things that accountants do to prove value, to actually
Well, I think we
seal the
briefly
deal?
spoke about the free consultation
Yeah.
earlier, which as a firm we're big advocates of. But however, I think it's really important to qualify your leads before you say that I'm going to travel 1 hour to see this prospective client.
Or even not travel at all, but in giving them a free consultation, you're still giving, it's still 2 hours out of your working day, it's 2 chargeable hours you're losing.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you do to qualify them?
Well, I think it's really important to log all of your inquiries and, get relevant information from that prospect. When they call in, find out how long have they been trading? Have they got an accountant already? What kind of services are they looking for? But I think that should be done with any inquiry. It's really, I think it's surprising how many businesses don't log the inquiries that they get. If you don't log it, how can you go back and look at patterns? Anyway, that's a different story. But really qualify the information that they're giving you before you sit down with them.
A simple one that I've seen some firms use, and it's almost doubled the conversion rate from these free consultations, is about 2 weeks beforehand they send them a short questionnaire, and they say we want the answers back at least 4 days before we meet, along with 2 years of accounts. And the rationale for that is because you're asking me to come and give you a free consultation where on the spot you're going to say, how could you save me tax?
Yeah.
No, of course accountants can all do that, but how much more effectively could you do it
If you had that information
if you had
beforehand.
thought about it beforehand? Because then I could turn around. So Alex has given up, let's pretend he's a potential client. He's giving up an hour of his time as well. But if you were to send me your accounts first, I could give you more value in that time. So that's the reason for doing it from a client side.
But let's say that we've from that side of the fence, we've been through this qualification process, and I've given up not just time but quite a lot of
information.
what I might feel is quite sensitive information. That consultation has to be a great experience, and it has to give me something.
Absolutely.
I think that I can take away whether I become a client or not. There has to be that kind of
That's
trust
the
and
whole
value
objective
exchange
of
there.
it. You have to walk out of there going, that was brilliant. Even if you never come and see me again, you've got to walk off of that conversation going, it was brilliant, it was useful. And so as the accountant, that's my sole objective. My objective is not to sit there and go, here's 3 simple tips, now let me sell to you, because that's not the point. The point is to give you a great experience and then to work on it from there. But the point I was making about the accounts first, the questionnaire first, is if you didn't send them to me,
What kind of advice can you give me?
well, A, what kind of advice can I give you? But B, how interested and how likely are you to actually sign up anyway? Or are you just going around kicking tyres and looking for the cheapest accounting deal?
Yeah. Are there any other factors that affect this? I mean, we talked a little bit before the session around proposals and things like that. How standard are those? How much extra could you put into a proposal for a client?
I think having sort of sector-specific proposals is a useful thing, and making sure, again, going back to using the right language for that specific sector and incorporating that into your proposal, I think is quite useful.
Making it about them.
Exactly,
The proposal has got to be about them.
Yeah.
Have you got in your proposal, do you almost start off with,
we are this.
Well, some start off with we are this. Well, immediately I'm going, no, thank you. But actually, you've already spent some time talking to this client before you send them that proposal.
You know enough about
So
them.
summarise what you know about them.
Yeah.
Prove that you were listening. Some people don't even do that. And so if I was a proposal, it must prove that I was listening.
And also there's follow-up after the initial meeting. You know, how
The
many
rest of the business.
people don't follow up? You know, they meet, they have the initial meeting, they send a quote, and they never hear anything back from them.
So you're really into more, use the dirty word, it's sales process, isn't it, at this stage? And how comfortable are people with that in your experience, Jon?
If you call it sales process,
Not
most
very.
small firms are like,
Or asking for the business, let's call it that. Is that more?
that's even worse.
Is
It's
it?
like, oh, I don't want to do that. But if we termed it and started to talk to them about, first of all, making sure that they're interested in the client, making sure that they've summarised the stuff that the client's talking about, making sure that each point that the client's worried about, they've demonstrated what they can do, and that they are going to follow it up, because that's a big one. Follow it
Massive,
up.
yeah.
I know opinion varies a lot on this one, but some firms are great believers in giving the quote there and then. Small firms, for larger, you know, let's be honest, for somebody like Dunkleys that's dealing with an academy school, it's
You
the
can't
right
just
thing
be-
to propose.
Yeah.
However, if I was dealing with a one-man band or something else, why wouldn't I just deliver it? So some firms are great advocates of that, and I can see the benefit of it. Some people like to send something more formal afterwards. I think it depends on your style.
Definitely.
So when we
And the
talk,
client.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about sales process, don't think that it means you must do this in the way that every book says. What it means is you should have a way which works, which makes it easier for you. And the process is also about ticking things off. So I sent the proposal out. I haven't yet ticked off, I followed up.
Yeah. And then by following up, you can find out, you know, if they're not interested, why they're not interested. Is it because, you know, you're too far away, or, you know, you were too expensive?
Yeah.
And then it's really important to look back at that information and then review it and then use that going forward for your marketing.
Constantly analysing,
Constantly.
learning, feeding
Yeah.
that back into your marketing program. But really, there's the simple buyer journey, consideration cycle, whatever we want to call it, from I don't know, I need an accountant, let alone yours, to I'm your client, and
Yeah.
the simple types of content that influence each stage of that process doesn't need to be complicated. Now, final pro tip, if you're thinking about creating marketing content that speaks to that consideration cycle, is it's very time sensitive, and if people are already at the stage where they're actively seeking a solution but they're not talking to you, you need to act very fast to pick that up, or to be part of their process. So if let's go back to that hypothetical event where you've collected 1,000 business cards or email addresses or whatever the contact details we've got are, something you might want to consider is actually start at the end of the consideration cycle. You don't know where any of those people are in their thinking. Now, if you send a polite message to that whole section of your database with an offer, whether that's a free consultation, a meeting, I'd like to have a conversation with you, but a message that assumes gently that they're already actively seeking a solution, you'll get the quick wins out of that list. The people who are already there, maybe even a few others, will say, I'd like to talk to you, and those get to be qualified. And a brief...
Would those that aren't, would those at the other end of the spectrum be put off by that at all?
Usually not. So,
Okay.
you know, if we're talking about email marketing, which I guess we are because we've said we'll collect email addresses, unfortunately, every message you send is going to have some level of unsubscription. So you may get people unsubscribe from the message inevitably, but I don't think people, having met you at a conference, let's say, or even signed up online for some piece of information, I don't think people will be surprised or offended to receive a message, as long as it's not pushy, that says
one
we're
message, not one every day.
No,
that's
but then
the difference,
also, I guess what you could do in that situation is you've sent a generic message saying, do you want to meet up for a free consultation?
Yep.
Then the ones that respond you can put into one list, and
Exactly.
the ones that don't respond you can then target with a different message.
And what I would suggest, actually, in that situation, we've got an unknown segment of your database is brief pools, maybe a week or two, and then send them a message that assumes that they're in the middle of the consideration cycle. So send them that stage 2 message.
Yeah.
It's a case study of how someone
Drip
like you
feed it.
has
Yeah.
benefited from working with Dunkleys. And then those that respond to the case study, you can revisit that slightly more bottom of the funnel conversation. Those that don't, they go back a stage, and they're just the people who get your monthly newsletter, your helpful, useful information until such a time as you manage to qualify that they're ready for that sales conversation. So there's a little tip. If you've not run any marketing programs but you've got a database, we've been to a trade show, and
so if you're reactivating your database, as it were,
perfect way
work
to
backwards.
do that.
Work backwards through the list, I suppose.
Don't be too
And I suppose
pushy
in
with
some
the
ways
messaging.
it's no different to, subconsciously, if I met you at a networking event and you just said, yes, I like talking to accountants, you're at the first stage, you're at the one that's far away, and at some point I'll just send you some useful tips. But if I met you and you said, I definitely want to meet with you very quickly, I know that you're at that end of the cycle. And all of us would immediately think, well, I'll give them a call the next day. So it's no different to what we would do subconsciously, but it's making us think of it in a different context.
Structure into it, absolutely. So that brings us to the end of the consideration cycle, and that's just about all we've got time for today. So thank you for attending. I'd like to say a big thank you to Jon and to Siobhan for being our guests. We'll send out an on-demand version of this whole session in the next couple of days. You'll also receive a write-up of the session. Use the links on this page for more information, especially that session exercises document. There's some really useful exercises that you can run through in your firm in that document. And keep an eye on AccountingWEB for more coverage to come. And finally, thank you to our sponsors, Receipt Bank, and thank you, more importantly, for joining us today.